Canada is silently walking away from US tourism. No headlines, no noise, just empty storefronts, shuttered restaurants, and border towns slowly bleeding out. No one made an official announcement, no signs went up. But the shift is real. It's hitting hard. Once busy roads are quiet, casinos are closing, local economies are unraveling. Millions of Canadians who used to cross the border every weekend have simply stopped coming. Why? The reasons go deeper than gas prices or exchange rates. In this video, we'll uncover how 10 US states are being quietly abandoned and what that says about the growing divide between two longtime neighbors. Number 1. New York. When Niagara went quiet, the roar of Niagara Falls hasn't changed, but the noise around it, that's a different story. In 2025, it's not water crashing that grabs your attention, it's the deafening silence from the absence of Canadian tourists. A staggering 25 to 45% drop in cross-border visits, land crossings down by nearly a third, and the fallout. Buffalo's retail sales plummeted by over 60%. Casinos are shutting down tables, and once bustling malls look like post-apocalyptic movie sets. For years, Ontario license plates flooded Western New York weekend warriors chasing cheap gas outlet deals, and a taste of America just hours away. No flashy campaigns were needed. Canadians came like clockwork, breathing life into border towns, but this year they vanished, not because they had to, because they wanted to. The issue isn't logistics, it's emotional. Tourists from the north began to feel like unwelcome guests, like wallets, not neighbors. A Canadian named Marissa summed it up: "We don't need the US for shopping anymore. They need us. We're tired of being treated like walking wallets." She's not alone. Reports surfaced of restaurants jacking up prices on weekends, servers mocking Canadian guests for stingy tipping, and border officials ramping up inspections that felt more like interrogations than routine checks. For many Canadians, it was the final straw, so they quietly stayed home. They turned to Toronto's boutiques, Vancouver's cafes, and Montreal's markets. Meanwhile, Buffalo and Niagara Falls began to shrink, not in size, but in spirit. New York didn't lose tourists, it lost trust. And when the lifeline of a local economy cuts itself off, recovery isn't just difficult, it's uncertain, and New York, that was just the beginning. Number 2. Vermont. When the leaves fell but the tourists didn't. Vermont once relied on Canadians the way trees rely on auto, predictably, beautifully, and completely. Every fall, Quebecers poured in to see the leaves change, filling up bed and antique shops and gas stations along the way. But in 2025, that tradition was broken. Hotel bookings in Vermont dropped by nearly 45%. Scenic foliage routes empty. Towns like St. Albans and Middlebury saw more red ink than red maple. Why? It wasn't just the economy. It was resentment. Locals once welcomed Canadians with pie and postcards, but when revenge pricing took hold, charging more during peak weekends, adding surcharges, and barely hiding their disdain, the tourists took note. One Quebec family told reporters they stopped visiting because we felt like golden geese welcomed until we stopped laying money. Even worse, once the Canadians left, the warmth left with them. Inns shut their doors early. Shops left their open signs on only to break the silence. Route 7, once buzzing with traffic and laughter, now hums only with the sound of wind. The irony. Many of these towns supported policies that made border crossings stricter after the pandemic, thinking they'd protect their communities. Instead, they pushed their most loyal visitors away. And when the Canadians disappeared, so did the illusion of independence. Suddenly, Vermont wasn't just missing tourists, it was missing purpose. Maine didn't fare much better. Land crossings dropped by 27%. Lobster rolls, whale tours, and French-language walking guides, all collecting dust. When friendliness is replaced with suspicion, even the most charming towns lose their charm, and that's exactly what happened. Vermont thought its scenery was enough, but even the prettiest view can't hide a cold shoulder. Next stop, Michigan, where a single bridge divides two very different worlds. Number 3. Michigan, the bridge where one side went dark. There, a bridge in Sault Ste. Marie that used to feel symbolic, connecting to nations, to cities, one shared history. But in 2025, it became a line in the sand. On the Canadian side, life buzzes with traffic, full restaurants, and packed shops. On the American side, silence. Border traffic into Michigan dropped by 13%. Detroit lost 10% of its international visitors. And it shows. The once lively Cowayden Casino sits half-lit. Restaurants that used to turn away customers on weekends now turn off the lights before dinner. In just 1 year, 38 small businesses in Sault Ste. Marie, Michigan, shut down. It's not because Canada slammed the door shut, it's because their people chose to walk away. Why make the trip when there's little return? The deals are gone, the friendliness has faded, and for many Canadians, crossing into Michigan no longer feels safe or worth the scrutiny. Locals are feeling it hard. Unemployment is rising. Some families are packing up and leaving generations behind in search of work. A waitress at a once popular diner said, "We used to serve Canadians with a smile. Now we just serve coffee to each other, hoping someone walks in." And Detroit, a city that's worked so hard to rebuild, is now watching the border crumble again, not from crime or crisis, but from neglect and assumption. Because when you treat your best customers like they'll always come back, eventually, they don't, and Michigan is learning that lesson the hard way. Up next, a border town you've probably never heard of, but for one indigenous community, the silence is more than economic, it's existential. Number 4. Pembina and Point Roberts. The towns Canada stopped visiting for decades. Towns like Pembina, North Dakota, and Point Roberts, Washington thrived on a simple formula. Canadians drove across the border, filled their gas tanks, stocked up on goods, grabbed a quick bite, and went home. It wasn't glamorous, but it was steady, reliable, predictable, until it wasn't. In 2025, that weekend ritual died out and the towns that depended on it started to collapse. In Pembina, gas stations sit empty. Store shelves are still stocked, but not for long. A local clerk said, "We used to ring up thousands of dollars before noon. Now we count footsteps." Point Roberts has it worse. According to The Guardian, the once bustling border town is now eerily quiet. Situated on a geographic anomaly of the U.S. but only accessible through Canada, Point Roberts used to welcome thousands of Canadian visitors every week. But now, businesses are closing down, properties are for sale, and longtime residents are wondering if the town has a future. The root cause, not just exchange rates, though that plays a part. It's the emotional toll of being treated as second-class visitors. Canadians grew tired of inconsistent border policies, rising fees, and what many described as an unwelcoming attitude from U.S. customs and local businesses alike. So they stopped coming. The silence didn't arrive suddenly. It crept in one weekend at a time, until the parking lots emptied and the open signs became decorations. For places like Pembina and Point Roberts, this isn't a tourist slowdown. It's abandonment, and no one is stepping in to stop it. They weren't border towns, they were bridges. Now they're just reminders of what happens when bridges get burned quietly. Coming up next, Montana, where even the great outdoors can't outrun a vanishing neighbor. Number 5. Montana glaciers icy silenced. There was a time when Glacier National Park was summer's crown jewel. Campgrounds were packed. Canadian families rented cabins, bought souvenirs, and flooded Instagram with photos of pristine lakes and snowy peaks. But in 2025, the parking lots are bare. The cabins are cold, and the park rangers have no one to guide but the wind. Montanans' tourism industry is taking a quiet beating, and no one's sounding the alarm. Canadian travel to Glacier is down sharply, not because the park lost its charm, but because its visitors lost the will to cross the border. The once friendly flow of tourists from Alberta and British Columbia has dried up, leaving local business owners stunned. A weaker Canadian dollar certainly plays a role. At 72.73 cents to the US dollar, a weekend in Montana no longer feels like a bargain. But that's only half the story. The real damage comes from what CTV News and The Independent call a diplomatic chill. Canadians feeling less welcome, less safe, and less inclined to support a country that increasingly feels distant. Linda, a cabin owner near West Glacier, put it bluntly. "Last summer we had bonfires and barbecues with guests from Calgary. This year, I made 12 pancakes, 8 for the rest are for the bears." Her husband now drives delivery routes to make ends meet. It's not just about dollars, it's about connection. When that connection breaks, the economy isn't the only thing that suffers. The wilderness remains, but without people to experience it, it might as well be invisible. Montana didn't close the door, it just forgot to keep it open. Next, Idaho, where the economic chill is hitting so hard, even the jam jars are gathering dust. Number 6. Idaho. Port Hill's quiet goodbye. Port Hill, Idaho isn't famous. It doesn't have a theme park, a national monument, or viral Instagram views. What it had was neighbors Canadians crossing the border every weekend to shop, fill up on gas, grab a cup of coffee, and chat like old friends. That simple routine kept the town alive. Now, it's barely breathing. Since 2025, Port Hill has fallen into near silence. Exchange rates hovering between 72-73 cents per Canadian dollar made cross-border shopping feel like a ripoff. But the real damage runs deeper. This isn't about math, it's about meaning. One store owner described it like this: "We didn't just sell jam, we shared stories, we remembered birthdays, we watched kids grow up over maple syrup and gasoline, and now it's just us." The cafes that used to buzz with conversation are empty. Artisanal shops that Canadians adored are now dusting off shelves with no one to sell to. Even the gas station closes early, not from lack of fuel, but lack of hope. And what hurts most, it didn't happen overnight. It was slow, creeping. A weekend without cars, then a week, then a month, and now silence feels normal. Idahoans are known for their warmth, their work ethic, and their deep loyalty to the land and each other. But loyalty alone can't pay the bills. And as the federal government stays silent and the border stays quiet, places like Port Hill are fading not with a crash, but with a whisper. It turns out, small towns don't die from disaster, they die from indifference. Up next, Washington, where the milk went sour, and with it, a border town's last chance at staying alive. Number 7. Washington. When the milk went sour in Bellingham, Washington used to be Canada's unofficial grocery store. Every weekend, British Columbia plates lined the streets, and locals joked that Costco needed traffic lights just for the dairy aisle. Canadians came to buy milk, eggs, gas, basic things, but in bulk, and with joy. Not anymore. In 2025, the milk section at Costco has been replaced with camping gear. Locals laugh. Canadians don't come for milk anymore, so let's just go camping instead. A joke, but one that masks a bitter truth. The cross-border flow has all but stopped. Bakeries have shortened hours. Gas stations barely break even. A once thriving border economy is now dotted with for rent signs. In Blaine, a woman who's run a bakery since 1983 said her waffles used to be the best reason to cross the border. Now, her Monday and Tuesday shifts are gone. She closes to save electricity. The cake is still warm. The chairs still sit in the window, but the laughter, the French accents, the bonjour and merci, all gone. It's not just gas prices or the weak Canadian dollar. It's how people feel. Canadian visitors have spoken up about harsh border inspections, cold attitudes, and the quiet sense that they're no longer welcome. And when hospitality disappears, loyalty follows. Washington never expected to lose its neighbors, but the signs were there, one empty parking lot at a time. Now cities like Blaine and Bellingham are learning a hard truth. When you build your economy on friendliness, the cost of losing that warmth is steep. And the milk, it didn't just spoil, it symbolized a bond going sour. Next, Alaska, far from the mainland, yet still caught in the cold silence of a broken connection. Number 8. Alaska, the last frontier. Left behind, Alaska may be remote, but it's never been forgotten, at least not by Canadians. Every summer, thousands of them made the long scenic drive up the Alaska Highway, stopping at small towns, fueling the local economy, and turning wilderness into a shared adventure. But in 2025, that convoy disappeared. Tourism revenue in Alaska has dropped by a staggering 60%. Roads once lined with RVs and flags from Alberta and British Columbia are now quiet. Gift shops sit fully stocked. Cabins sit fully vacant. And the silence, it's deafening. One cabin owner near Tok live-streamed her heartbreak on Facebook. I planted flowers. I hung the Canadian flag outside. I even kept the same barbecue recipe because I knew they loved it. But this year, no one came. I keep waiting, but no one comes back. She wasn't exaggerating. The Canadian absence didn't just hit wallets, it hit hearts. Alaska didn't close its borders. It didn't argue with Canada, but it still suffered the fallout of being part of a country that lost its neighbors' trust. The Canadian dollar's weakness hurt, but what really drove people away was the sense that crossing into the US, even into its most beautiful state, no longer felt like an escape. It felt like a risk, like an emotional toll booth had gone up. And for Alaska, that's devastating, because when you're this far out, every visitor matters. Every cabin night booked, every tank filled, every A and thanks is part of the fabric. But now the flags still wave. To no one, the flowers still bloom. For no guests, and the grill, it's still warm, but only for the locals, left to wonder when, or if, their friends from the north will return. Up next, Maine, where even the sea breeze can't cover up the absence of a once loyal crowd. Number 9. Maine, when the bonjour turned to goodbye in coastal towns like Bar Harbor and Portland, the sound of French once mingled with the sea breeze. Every summer, visitors from Quebec and New Brunswick filled hotels, toured lighthouses, bought local cheese, and greeted Mainers with a cheerful bonjour. But in 2025, that harmony disappeared. Tourism data shows a 35% drop in Canadian visitors to Maine. Whale-watching tours now sail half-empty. Seafood restaurants flicker with closed early signs. And some of the most beloved bilingual tours guides quietly retired because there's no one left to guide. One vintage car tour guide in Portland said, "I learned French because I loved welcoming Canadians. Now, I walk the streets, and all I hear is the wind and the gulls." For 10 summers, he greeted Montreal families like old friends. This year, he packed up early, his convertible empty, his heart even more so. Locals aren't blaming exchange rates, they're blaming frostier politics, tighter borders, and a growing feeling that Canadian guests aren't just overlooked, they're unwelcome. According to Travel and Tours World, diplomatic tensions and changing U.S. policies have made many Canadians rethink their summer traditions. And the loss goes beyond money. It's about lost connection, lost rituals, and a door that once swung open now feeling half-shut. Maine always prided itself on being the friendliest doorway to America. But even warm hospitality can't overcome cold policy and rising distrust. When people feel like they're no longer invited, they stop showing up. So now the docks are still, the menus are bilingual, but the tables are empty. And Maine, like so many other border states, is left wondering how to win back neighbors who once considered this place their second home. Now, let's step back and look at the bigger picture. Number 10. Minnesota, when the cheers faded and the signs went up, sports arenas echo with empty seats. Just 33 Canadians showed up for a bike race that usually draws over 600. That's not a drop, that's a disappearance. And in 2025, Minnesota is feeling it. Land travel from Canada is down nearly 35%. What used to be a steady stream of visitors buying gas, grabbing a bite, joining events has slowed to a trickle. The impact, deep and personal. Take Grand Marais, a scenic border town that once counted on Canadian travelers to keep its small businesses thriving. This year the shops are quieter, but the windows still speak volumes. "We love Canadians" signs are everywhere. Not because they're pandering, but because they mean it. Locals here aren't waiting for federal fixes. They're taking matters into their own hands. One event organizer introduced reverse tariffs, offering 25% discounts to Canadian customers as a gesture of goodwill. It's not just about luring them back. It's about saying, "We remember you, we appreciate you, and we miss you." Residents of Grand Marais have watched their economic heartbeat slow, but they're not giving up. These are towns built on relationships, not just transactions. And when those relationships vanish, the hole they leave behind is more than financial, it's cultural, emotional, even spiritual. The hope that the warmth Minnesotans are showing now will matter, that someday soon those bike races will be full again, that the cheers will return to the stadiums, and that the "We love Canadians" signs will no longer be reminders of loss, but symbols of resilience. Because in Minnesota, they're not just counting tourists, they're counting on friendship. Now, let's bring it all together. What does this quiet exodus really mean for America? Before you scroll, think about this. If a single border closes in silence, how many stories go unheard? Tell us below, has your town felt the shift? If this video opened your eyes, check out our last one for another untold chapter. We pour heart and hustle into every story, so if you felt this, hit subscribe. Just one click keeps us going.